This is what we're talking about. I mean, this is how scary this gets. This is not some futuristic film or book, science fiction. No, if a woman is wanted under criminal charges in another state, we're going to take steps to protect them from extradition. Thank you, Senator Krueger, and thank you, Assigned Member Levine, Chuck Levine. We're also going to be defending abortion providers from medical malpractice and licensure issues, and I thank Senator Hinchey and Member Assembly Rosenthal, Senator Kaplan, and again, Assembly Member Rosenthal for your support on these two bills. We're also making sure that providers and their families can keep their addresses confidential and keep themselves safe. And I thank Senator Cleary and Member Assembly Paulin for realizing that these are people who really are heroes. What they and their staffs have to endure, and when there have been assaults and threats, I have gone to these clinics just to lend my support. And in my home in Buffalo, I live down the hall from an older couple who, when they learned we were going to be taking these steps a few weeks ago, the woman hugged me tightly. And I asked her why this was so personal to her. And she said, because my husband, doctor down the hall from me, had been an abortion provider before 1970. And she says, I was his nurse. She started crying and she says, I can't tell you how many lives we lost because people would come in after they tried to have an abortion at home or literally in the back alleys, and they failed and they came in and they bled to death in their office. All these years later, this was an emotional experience for her to think that we could go back to that time. So we are going to protect these providers and their families, and this legislation today will accomplish that, and we're not finished with it as well. We're also going to have a task force to study the impact of limited service pregnancy centers. We all know what that means on pregnant women. Thank you, Senator Hoylman, and Member of Assembly Glick as well. Assembly Member Glick. Thank you. So, this legislation is just one more way we say that New York is leading, and we'll always stand up against attacks on our bodily autonomy. That's what this is about. Because as the first female governor of New York, I take this personally. And that's a fight I'm willing to take on, not just on behalf of the women of New York, but for women all across this nation. I refuse to go backwards. And I promise you, as long as I'm governor, we will not. Because these are rights that have been fought for generations, and New York State has led every step of the way. We've been trailblazing, as you mentioned early in this room, all the people who stood up against the tides of their time, so bold, so courageous. And I'm also thinking of the women who fought for the right to control their own bodies and have an abortion in New York 3 years before Roe v. Wade. We were there for women then. We're there for women now, not just here, but all across this country. But make no mistake, this is not just an attack on reproductive health and freedom. It's an attack on the very values that make New York what it is. And that's why, with a stroke of a pen, I will say, not here, not in New York, not ever. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring up to the podium a great leader, Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Yay! Not in New York, not now, not ever, not in New York, not now, not ever. Not in New York, not now, not ever. Yes. I am just I'm happy, but I'm not happy to be here. Certainly happy that we have the great leadership of our governor, Governor Kathy Hochul, the first woman governor, and yes, this is clearly personal. She wasted no time to make sure that we prepared for what seems to be the inevitable. I also want to thank my colleague and friend, Speaker Hasty, who is always ready to stand up for the women. As the governor says, he's a man who understands. And I appreciate your leadership and your friendship. And yes, Dr. Bassett, you are a welcome addition. Thank you so very much for being here. And Ms. Coles, I look forward to working with you and hearing from you. And again, President Sparks, what an honor to be here in this great hall. Thank you for hosting us. I was thinking about what to say because, I never really know what I'm going to say until I show up. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's... But the last time I was with the governor, it was about gun violence and what we did to deal with the insanity of mass murders and the gun violence that is a inherently American problem. And I got a pen, and I have the pen. And today, I'm going to get another pen. And I was saying to myself, I like pens, but I don't want these pens. I don't want to have to be here fighting for things that we should not have to fight about. In 1970, I was a teenage New Yorker who was pregnant. And New York was one of the few states at the time with 12 Republicans who joined Democrats to make sure that women in New York had a choice about their reproductive capacity and what they wanted to do. I didn't know anything about the legislature. I didn't know how that happened, to be honest. All I knew is that I was pregnant and I had a choice. When I ran and won, I ran on the fact that because we predated Roe v. Wade, our statutes were still in the criminal codes and not in health codes, and we weren't even up to date with the 1973 law. And it made no sense to me. And in 2007, I carried the bill which ultimately Senator Kruger passed when we got to the majority in 2019 that said we must codify, we must update our reproductive health laws. It made perfect sense. And every time one-on-one I talked to somebody, they'd say, oh yeah, well, is that so? They were happy about the fact that we predated Roe, but they understood. And we could not do it. In fact, they laughed at me and they said, oh, you're just looking for attention. My offices were attacked. They had rallies against my actually having the nerve. I was shocked to carry a bill that suggested that we should have reproductive health updates. And when we got to the majority in 2019, one of the first things we did, thank you to my incredible Senate majority, because we know the Assembly was trying to do it. All right, but it took a Senate majority of Democrats who actually got it done. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And why do I say that? Because even then, even though in 1970 there were Republicans who were willing to vote for a woman's right to reproductive choices, in 2019, not one Republican was willing to codify a 1973 law in 2019. And here we are in 2022, awaiting what we all know will probably be the end of Roe v. Wade as a constitutional right. But here in New York, not only are we saying, not in New York, not now, not ever, and at the ready to help women who have to flee their states in order to have the reproductive care they need. And these bills today will say that we will not aid and abet anyone who wants to criminalize our right to choose. That's what we're saying today. And we're not done yet, because as you chip away, as you chip away, as you chip away, we will continue to find new ways to stop your attack on our ability to govern our own lives and our reproductive choices. Do you know why? Because we're going to end the way we began. Because this is New York. And in New York, not in New York, not now, not ever. Again, not in New York, not now, not ever. Not in New York, not now, not ever. Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the podium Speaker Carl Hayes.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you everybody for coming today. As the majority leader says, is a day I wish we didn't have to come and be here. But I'm so proud of the work that we've done together in partnership, particularly with Governor Hochul and Majority Leader Andrew Stewart-Cousins and both of our conferences. I would like to thank our extraordinary bill sponsors, Linda Rosenthal, Amy Paulin, Chuck Levine, Chris Burdick, for all of their hard work and dedication to this issue, and of course to Deborah Glick, who not only sponsored one of the bills being signed into law today, but also carried the Reproductive Health Act in the Assembly for years and has been a tireless fighter for women. I often like to remind people that I remember when Deborah was debating this bill, and our colleagues across on the other side of the aisle, one after another, kept getting up and saying that this was so unnecessary. Why are we doing this? But here it is, about 3 years later, we're understanding why it was so important for Deborah to have that long and important debate about a woman's right to choose. But I also, and I know they were mentioned, but I want to take the time to mention all of the other great Assembly members who are here: Rebecca Seawright, Catalina Cruz, Nili Rosick, Jonathan Jacobson, Emily Gallagher, Steve Otis, Joanne Simon, Dee Dee Barrett, I heard Natalia Fernandez, Jessica Gonzalez-Rojas, and Jennifer Raj Kumar for their important leadership on these topics. But what we did, and the governor mentioned it, we worked quickly to put together legislation to make sure that New York does the right thing by women. I've said it before, and I will continue to say, I believe the Supreme Court has no right to tell women what to do with your bodies. But here we are, having to stand up for women because our federal courts are not going to do that. And I do like to remind people, elections have consequences. When you elect the President of the United States, they get to nominate the members of the Supreme Court. Heck, even the Republican Party denied that from President Obama because they knew they wanted to do this. They knew they wanted to have a strong majority on the court that would tell women what to do with their bodies. But here we are in New York, doing the right thing by protecting women, protecting providers, and protecting choice. Thank you all for being here today.
Please welcome to the podium the New York State Health Commissioner, Dr. Mary Bassett.
Well, Governor Hochul, Majority Leader Stewart Cousins, Speaker Hasty, and all of the many elected officials who are here today. As the New York City Health Commissioner, I thank you for your leadership in these uncertain times. My 35 years in public health have taught me how centrally important it is to have political leadership that understands the importance of public health. I never imagined in my lifetime that we would be in the position where we fully expect the Supreme Court of the United States to roll back the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, ending half a century of federal constitutionally protected abortion rights. Some 26 states, home to more than half of the population of reproductive age in this country, are poised to further roll back abortion rights. If this happens, many states will not permit exceptions for pregnancies that result from rape or incest. And doctors in many states will be pressed to make difficult assessments about the risks to the mother, as pregnancy that threatens the life of the mother will typically remain in place. Today, these decisions are left to the person who's pregnant and their healthcare provider, and this now will become something of increased scrutiny. But here in New York State, as we've all been hearing, the protection of abortion rights is enshrined in the law, and today these legal rights are being bolstered. New York is and continues to be a beacon of hope, a safe harbor, a sanctuary. As you've all heard, New York State legalized abortion 3 years before Roe and is home to the first Planned Parenthood center to offer abortion services. Since 1970, New York State has stood by the right to abortion across administrations, Republican and Democratic, and we are now poised to again be an example to the nation. Before Roe and after 1970, nearly 2/3 of the abortions performed in New York State were for women who came from outside of New York to obtain these safe and legal services. And that's why the governor has provided $25 million so that we can bolster these services, so that in New York, abortion is and will remain safe, legal, available, accessible. As we work to keep abortion safe and accessible, we also need to strengthen family planning services, empowering all New Yorkers to take charge of their sexual health. You know, it still bears repeating, I think, that when safe abortion is stripped away, it doesn't stop abortions. It never has. But abortions become more deadly and dangerous, and access to safe abortion will be filtered through the inequities in our society, and this will be particularly true for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. The new barriers will mean that communities of color and all those who are low income will lack easy access. This will further entrench longstanding inequities. So, safe abortions are part of our medical and physical well-being, but they also provide us with something just as important, the right to autonomy, the right to a choice that is so entwined with the many other choices that a person makes in their lifetime, the choice to learn, the choice to work, the choice to protect one's mental health, and the list goes on. All of these are bound up in the right to safe, legal, and affordable, accessible abortion. Without federal guarantees, these fundamental reproductive rights will need to be held together by the strength and the will of the people and state policy and local policies. I want to thank President Sparks for reminding us of the historic nature of this hall, also echoed by our governor. I saw these words as I walked in today, and I'm going to echo them now. They were spoken by Abraham Lincoln over 150 years ago. I have faith that right makes might. Let me say that again. I have faith that right makes might. And together with the leadership of Kathy Hochul and the rest of the legislature, we will continue to protect these rights so that everyone knows that they have a right to health and they have a right to choice and a right to their life as they choose to live it. New York will never stop fighting for you and your rights. Abortion must and will remain safe, legal, and accessible. Thank you.
Please welcome to the podium Quadira Coles.
Ooh, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Quadira Coles, and I'm here on behalf of all the Black girls across this country, all the transgender and gender nonconforming siblings, a population that we serve at Girls for Gender Equity, my colleagues here, and as the president of New Jersey Abortion Access Fund, where I'm witnessing the bubbling effect of restrictions on abortion across this country. I'm going to start off by saying Roe was never enough. The reality of that statement is settling with every opportunity that is passed and access to safe abortion care isn't being safeguarded. Today, we are laying down the foundation to ensure that New York is a safe haven for anyone who wants an abortion and anyone who wants to provide that care. I want to commend and thank all of the reproductive justice and gender equity advocates for pivoting and mobilizing so swiftly in order to meet this time of crisis with bold action. It is our powerful collective advocacy that allows us to be here today to solidify protections to abortion care and close the pathways that allows us to be criminalized for our right to choose. The Supreme Court has already signaled its intention to overturn Roe v. Wade. And across the country, abortion funds are seeing a massive influx for traveling patients seeking care for safer and more accessible abortions. Anyone with the will and the ability to make this a safe reality has an obligation to show up and fight. But we can't do this alone. Our other states need to be proactive in ensuring that the same protections are awarded to service providers, volunteers, caregivers who support a person's right to bodily autonomy. I supported 2 friends at the age of 15 and 16 in getting an abortion. Now imagine if we lived in southern states. All 3 of us would have been criminalized. A threat to our basic right to make decisions for ourselves and our families, whatever that may look like, is a dangerous thing to bypass. Restrictions on abortion access disproportionately impacts people of low income, people of immigrant status, Black people, Hispanic people, LGBTQ people, and our youth. And God forbid you are at the intersection of more than one of these identities. We know that all around reproductive health care is a challenging experience at any juncture of your life. And there are states intentionally making it hard to live a life of self-determination. Our bodies are not a monopoly. Our freedoms and liberties are debate, and we should all be defending abortion access because it's an intersectional and intergenerational, multi-layered issue. It is racial justice, gender justice, youth justice, health justice, and economic justice. It touches every single last one of us one way or another, and we will see a reproductive revolution in this lifetime. Thank you to the governor and all the bill sponsors, and most importantly to all the advocates who have been fighting for years, way before I was even born. I am really grateful to be here today. I am only 28 years old, and I am a part of a generation who will continue this fight. Your work, our ancestors' work, would never be in vain. Thank you.
It's now time to sign some bills. For all in attendance, please remain seated during the bill signing photos. Thank you. Please remain seated during the bill signing photos.
You guys want to, why don't you each take a side so you're right in the center here. Carl, you want to call it? That's great. Okay. Okay. We're going to do it for you. Okay.
This takes a lot of practice to use every single pen.
I've done a few of these. Yeah.
Long name. I'm putting a lot of Kathy Hochul.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Write out a name.
My real name is Kathleen Mary Courtney Hochul, so if I ever
Oh,
need
you couldn't.
I just don't want to do it that long. All right. The bill is signed.
Well done. I really never saw.
Leaders stay and we'll get